Hi everyone, my name is Zhao, and I'm a student at the University of Washington in the program on the environment. And I want to tell you a little bit of my internship with the Great Peninsula Conservancy, or the GPC. My project title is using remote acoustic monitoring to assess avian community response to forest management practice on Great Peninsula Conservancy preserves. As we all know, the state of Washington is also called the Evergreen State for its abundant evergreen forests. Forests are essential for human and other wildlife animals, but recent studies show that there is already a dramatic decline in populations of the land bird species in the North America, particularly in the Pacific Northwest regions, due to the massive forest destruction. Great Peninsula Conservancy is a land trust company that owns and manages conservation lands in Washington state. As you could see on the first image, there are a total of 5 conservation lands owned by GPC in Washington, and these locations where all my data for the project were collected. The goal of GPC is to maintain and improve the ecological integrity of forest lands in Washington by increasing species diversity. In order to achieve their goal, it is essential to evaluate the use of acoustic monitoring to determine whether the habitat restoration of forests is valuable for increasing bird population. Also, I'm personally interested in understanding how effective are those habitat conservation practices have impact on bird community. Therefore, I generate a researchable question. Do habitat conservation practice implemented on forest lands impact the bird community? I know my title reads a little bit of tedious, but basically this whole internship is about using the remote acoustic device called audio mode combined with a analytical tool called Albimon to collect bird acoustic recordings and response, as well as to analyze large amounts of bird audio data. Working with GPC, my job specifically is the second part, which is to use Albimon to analyze bird recordings. In terms of using the audio mode, there were experts at GPC whose job was to use audio mode device, which you could see from the second image. It is like a tiny little box with circuits and wires to capture bird sounds and calls recordings day and night. They just conduct their tasks on those 5 study areas and place the device there for a certain amount of time, usually like 2 to 3 months. And once they have done with that, they are going to upload all the recordings they've collected to Albimon. And after that, it is my job to analyze those data from there. You can see there's a flowchart explaining how the Albimon works. The imaging is a bit of small and it's probably hard for you to see it. So I will just walk you through the process. So basically, I just add all the target species into Albimon's platform. In this case, there were 10 target species, and then I study those species calls and sounds by looking at the sonograms and listening to their voice. After I got familiar with those bird sounds and calls, I just create sonograms templates for those species and enter the areas that I'm interested in for Albimons to conduct pattern matching. Albimon itself will automatically search for data and has the similar sonograms templates that I previously created and identified. After the validation, Albimon will produce like 1,000 pieces of recording data. My job is to just make sure that those data are precisely matched with the sonograms of templates. I would manually check if the sonograms looks or sounds like the template. I would check present. If they don't, I would check their like not present. Once I checked all the data are accurate, then I generate a result sheet to tell. For example, on the specific location, there were this amount of audio data for one particular species identified. So that is pretty much what I've been doing for the entire industry. And for my researchable question, I selected 3 bird species and 1 location to conduct my controlled trial experiment. I selected Swanson thrush, song sparrow, and Pacific slope blackcatcher on the site of Eagle B for the experiment. You can see all 3 species image on the results section. On this particular site, I searched the data both prior to the conservation practice and after the conservation practice to see if there are any changes to those 3 species population. So I could generate a conclusion based on the results. More specifically, I look at the percentage of recordings both prior to and after the practice implemented to the total. As you could see from the bar graph, there are a total of 3 sets of bar. The first set is the number of recordings of Swanson's thrush. The blue bar is the percentage of recordings identified for Swanson's thrush prior to the conservation practice, and the green bar is the percentage of recordings of Swanson's thrush after the conservation practice implemented. The second set is for song sparrow. These bars are the same. Blue bar is prior to the practice, and green bar is after the practice. Same for the third set of bar. That is for the Pacific slope blackcatcher. As you can see, all 3 species on Eagle B site, their post-restoration presence of percentage of recordings are all higher than the pre-restoration percentage. Therefore, I conclude that the percentage of avian species, calls, and sounds were always higher after conservation practice were implemented. And those results indicate that the habitat conservation practice implemented by the Great Peninsula Conservancy on forest lands are effective and increase the bird species population and the forest lands biodiversity. I learned a lot from this internship about the acoustic monitoring, and I would say that it has a prolonged significance in the biodiversity and ecological perspective. Remote acoustic monitoring is efficient in collecting targets in complex geographical locations, and it characterizes the change in bird community following habitat conservation practice, and it also directs future conservation practice work based on bird response. At the end, I would like to thank my site supervisor, Adrian Wolf, faculty advisor, Dr. Salman Duan, for their guidance. I will also like to thank all the peers at POE for their feedback, and also my family for their support. That's it for my presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me, and I would love to answer those questions. Thank you.